Hi everybody, welcome to this week's Squiggly Career podcast from Amazing If. I am Helen, I'm one of the co-founders of Amazing If, and I'm here as ever with the other co-founder, Sarah.
Hi everyone.
And this week on the podcast, we're going to be talking about how you can create a vision for your career. And this is a topic that we cover in one of our courses, which is called My Future. You can have a look at that on amazingif.com. But when we talk about a vision for your future and in the context of kind of your future career, we don't really believe in these kind of rigid career plans that say what you're going to be doing, 1 year, 2 year, 5 years out from now. We're much more in the space of exploring your career possibilities, looking at how you can use your strengths in different contexts, and kind of just taking a much more explorative route to your career in the future. But it can be useful to have some kind of vision, because sometimes I think people can feel a little bit lost if they've got no idea of what they want to do. So instead of plans and kind of rigid structures, we're much more about possibilities and visions that can motivate and drive you. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. So I thought maybe we'll start with a definition, and we could talk a little bit about why visions can be important. And then we'll get straight into how we've brought visions to life to help us kind of explore our career futures. And we'll then go on to some tips so that you can specifically do that for you. So a definition then of what is a career vision. I was having doing a bit of research. I love some research, Sarah, spotting up. She's laughing because I just do. I just get really stuck into it and I stick loads of quotes everywhere. But I haven't got any cheesy ones this week. But some of the things that I found to define what a career vision is a career vision is a mental image, a clear mental image of who you want to be and what you want to do in the future. And another one I quite liked was your vision is a picture of what you aspire to and what inspires you in your work life. And what I quite liked about both of those is that it kind of makes it visual, makes it tangible. So this idea that you can have a vision in your mind of something that interests you and inspires you, but actually making it a vision that's useful in your career requires you to turn that into a mental image, or actually sometimes like a physical picture or a digital picture of what it looks like. How do those definitions that I have found compare with your idea of what a career vision is, Sarah?
Well, a bit like you, but in a very different way, I've been mulling over career visions this week, knowing that we were going to talk about it, because I was actually having almost a battle in my own mind about visions and how visions actually fit within the Squiggly Careers context. So you go away and you do your research, and I sort of have mental battles with myself. Yeah, and which is probably a good reflection actually of our relative strengths there. But and the reason I get a little nervous about visions is kind of two things. One, we know within Squiggly Careers there's more ambiguity in kind of all of our contexts. It's not as predictable. And so, there's I think a fair question from people about going, well, is it worth doing a vision if I'm not sure what the future is going to look like? And I'm sure we must have mentioned it before, but someone told me about it again the other day. That thing on the BBC where you can put your job in and see just exactly how quickly we're all going to become a robot. So, if we're going to become a robot, should that basically just be our vision? How to not become a robot? So that was my first almost thought, and actually genuine kind of concern about going, this has got to be something that's actually going to be useful. And then the second thing, which I'm really adamant this shouldn't be about, is just a kind of platitude of visions that don't feel realistic, or just these things that feel like these big, almost like statements, but then there's no how do I get there, or how does that help me? It's just this sort of big ethereal thing. Because I actually think that's very like anti-Amazing If. I think I wrote down, I was like, I don't want people to be listening to this and be like, oh, vision, that sounds like so airy-fairy. Because I like that idea as a stamp, Sarah. We should have like the anti-Amazing If stamp. It is.
Where we see stuff.
So I thought, so that was my starting point. I sort of dissected it, and then I built it back up in the following ways. There were two things that kind of convinced me that this still works within a Squiggly Career. One is that this idea of having a work in progress attitude to life in general, I think is ever present, and something that we kind of really endorse within the Squiggly Careers. So I don't think the ambition here is to come up with some sort of tick box exercise of going, oh, I've now got this vision thing. It's just about ticking those things off, and then there'll be a point at which I'll have be done, or I'll have achieved that. I really liked the word kind of how what are you inspired to be doing, how are you inspired to be spending your time. And I don't think this is about time frames. I think this can be really useful in a month's time, And it can be something where you're kind of making progress to something bigger, but by starting now. So I think this idea of going, this is not about something that you don't do anything about. So kind of taking action. And I think the second thing that convinced me is actually, in my experience, it works. So that this idea of taking the time to articulate a really clear vision for yourself helps you to make decisions, points you in the right direction for you, and I think helps you to be really intentional. And one of the things that we hear a lot from people in squiggly careers is that at their worst, they can feel quite overwhelming. People are not sure what direction to take, and you can actually end up feeling quite lost and lonely. And we've kind of talked about that before. And I think these visions and doing them in the right way for you, in a way that works for you, can help you overcome some of those anxieties. So my conclusion after all of that thinking, of which I was just going through in my own mind, was that this is a good thing and it's helpful and it's going to help you next week and next month, not just in 3 years' time.
It reminds me of the third definition that I found aligns, I think, with what you were saying there. So visions stem from your values and passions, but it was the second point that I think is the real align. They shape our actions and they invest our work with meaning.
Yeah.
So I really like that they shape our actions. So to Sarah's point, it's not this ethereal future state thing. It's something that inspires you, that can shape your action today. And I think I also quite like that, invest your work with meaning, so that, sometimes you might be in a job and going, oh, why am I doing this job? But if you understand it's because you want to, I don't know, be a thought leader in that industry or become a leader or whatever it is, sometimes I think having a vision can help you connect what you're doing today and why you're doing it in a way that if you've not got the vision, you might sometimes be scratching your head and thinking, oh God, am I in the right place right now? So how about we make it a little bit more real? If for anybody that's still in the, this sounds slightly woolly concept by kind of what we've done. So if I'll go first, Sarah, then maybe you could share yours. Yeah. I know we've got slightly different ways of doing it. So I started I don't know, when did I do my first one, Sarah? About 5 years ago. I started to create a visual vision. So we talked about that picture thing. I have very literally collected images from like generally magazines or that just got around the house, or images that I find really, really inspiring. And I didn't really analyse it too much. I literally ripped them out of magazines. I put them into one of those little plastic folders for a while. And once I had a kind of wallet of these images that was full, I knew that I could kind of create, like, think of a collage. It sounds like a bad art project, doesn't it? But and I just sat there and I tried to make sense of all these images, and maybe I'd got a couple that were sort of saying the same thing to me and I only needed one of them. But eventually I whittled down all these bits of scraps of paper that I'd pulled out of magazines. Some of them were words as well that were in the magazines that really appealed to me. Some of them were pictures of people, some of them were, I don't know, illustrations. Didn't really, like I say, didn't analyse it, but I put it together into a picture. And I'll put this on the blog post that we put on the website on amazingif.com to accompany this podcast. So go over there and have a look at it. That's kind of the first one that I did 5 years ago. But when I had completed that, so you've got like an A4 page basically full of lots of pictures, I found it a really inspiring thing to look at. And it just spoke to me and motivated me about what I wanted my career and life. I'd probably say mine crossed over into life as well. Like, I had some home life things and everything from what I wanted my home to look like. So I wanted it quite white and clean. That's not what it looks like right now. And some kind of couple stuff as well. So mine probably crossed over into a kind of life vision as well as a career. I probably linked them together, but I found it really inspiring, and I had it as a picture that I put in my room, like on my pin board, my cork board. I took a photo of it and I had it as my screensaver, and I probably had it like visual visible for about a year. Like, it was my screensaver for about a year. It was on my corkboard in my study for about a year, and then I took it off. But I can still look back at that. I've kind of done Pinterest versions of this since, and I've also moved on to some kind of like affirmations that I'll talk about. But I can still look at that, and I still connect with it. And if I kind of go under the skin of why that is, I think it's because a lot of my the vision that I created, it was about my values. So, for example, freedom and how that shows up. Like, I created, I've actually got this picture of this woman with balloons because that's kind of like freedom to me. Now, that was important to me then, and it's still important to me now. So, when Sarah was talking earlier about, we know this stuff works, for me, that's something that I created 5 years ago about what I wanted my career and my life to look like. And I can still look at it today and really feel inspired and motivated by it. I was just saying as well that I've also looked at affirmations now. So these are more in the space of manifestos. So kind of words to bring it to life, where I've basically written a bunch of statements that I find really, really inspiring. And I have those saved in notes on my phone. And sometimes when I meditate, I'll kind of go to them. Sometimes I'll just flick at them in a day. But that also, I find that really inspiring to look at these statements about how I want to live my life, and particular quotes that really inspire me, and that is also something that I can connect with, and I use them. Sarah's like, I don't do that.
You
at all.
are so cheesy, but I do love you so much. I'm really struggling not to laugh, only because I was listening to. Have you seen the thing on the internet where Mark Wahlberg talks about his day? And it's like it's insane in terms of just like his routine.
Maybe I
and
have.
It
Doesn't he get up at like 2:00?
Yeah,
and
yeah.
does
So it's
something
that.
at 3:00. Yeah.
In response to that, I don't know if you saw Oprah Winfrey replied with what she does in terms of her day, and obviously she starts her day with some affirmations, and I was like, oh, look at you living the dream.
But, so you don't do it, Miss Mockery.
No.
But for someone who does do it, it actually sets a really positive intent of your day, and so you need to take a bit of time to determine what those affirmations are, and then find a way to fit them into your life. They're literally just positive statements about how you want to show up and how you want to live your life. And it's not like mine isn't religious. I'm not religious. It's just kind of the way. So I always want to bring energy into relationships and conversations that I have. That's kind of like part of mine. So it's just stuff like that. So it's not, Sarah will laugh at me and mock because we come at this from slightly different places. But I'd say if you're slightly more of a meditator, journaler, that kind of vibe, then affirmations may be something that could be interesting for you.
And actually, I do know as much as I do mock, because it's fun to do that.
It's her right to do that as a friend.
I actually do really love things like School of Life. And School of Life, you can buy like sets of cards, which are like confidence cards or affirmation cards. And I've seen things like that and got things like that in slightly different ways in the past, and really love them. I think they're really useful. I think the really important thing with visions is actually just finding like a way to do it that feels like right for you.
Oh,
so
totally.
Not doing it because you feel you should. Just going, are you a visual person? Do you prefer to write things down? Shall I talk a bit about how I've done it in the past?
Yes.
Which actually is still relatively visual. But I did an exercise 5 or 6 years ago, which was so like, it was funny, when you have like aha moments. I actually had like a proper aha moment, which I don't think happens that often. I think usually actually you figure this stuff out bit by bit as you go and connect the dots. But we were doing an exercise which I now call, it wasn't called this, but I love this name, so I just stick with it. And Helen knows I love this name, which is Visionary Pictionary. I like it because it rhymes, essentially. But as what you do, the way you do Visionary Pictionary, is, as the name implies, you just pick a point in the future and you draw what are you spending your time doing? That's it. That's the question. It's really straightforward, really simple. But you have got to draw it in a way that somebody could kind of guess in terms of what you're spending your time doing. And the first time I did this, I actually was encouraged to do it. I was doing it with somebody else. So you're there like drawing these like rubbish pictures, in my case. And it's what's really fascinating about doing that. And like, if you are listening to this, just, you can do this in 5 minutes, you can do it in an hour, you can do it multiple times. You don't kind of have to sit and go, oh, I must do this in a kind of quiet space where I've got loads of time. It's really fascinating to see what you draw, in what order, and what it helps you to figure out. And for me, there were kind of 3 things. One, I figured out in my personal life, I was already really happy. Now, I think obviously intuitively, I probably knew that. But not only was I already happy, but it was all of the things that I drew first. And I never thought that would be the case. If you'd suddenly gone to me, right, pick a point in the future, what are you spending your time doing? I am so motivated by the work that I do and really enjoy the work I do. I think I thought that would have always come first, but I probably had drawn 3 or 4 different things before I got to anything that was work related. So I just found that was just fascinating. And so though it sounds really boring, one of my aha moments was actually how important it is to maintain the things that I already had, in like personally, that were making me really happy. So like, sounds really boring, but it was like, actually, it's not to be underestimated because you still have to invest in those things. And it's really easy to, if you've already got them, to kind of forget about them or neglect them.
Yeah.
And so it was a real moment of clarity for me in terms of going, oh wow, the things that make me happy are actually really like boringly straightforward and simple, like lots of people, I guess, around like, you know, spending time with your friends and some of the sport I love to do and going for nice coffees with people and that kind of stuff, having time to read. But actually I realised just how important some of that stuff was to me. So that was kind of the first thing. The second thing I figured out was actually when I was doing that drawing, when I did get to some of the work things, just how much of a kind of portfolio vision I was drawing. There was no single kind of work vision in terms of going, oh, I must get to this job or I must get to this outcome. And this was, you know, it's probably slightly before we got to the squiggly kind of outcome and squiggly thinking. And essentially what I was drawing was a squiggly career without quite having known it at that point. But I realised then that actually a portfolio career, a portfolio world of work was what I wanted now, and not something that I was going, oh yeah, you know, maybe there's an assumption that I've got to wait till I'm 60 before I can do that. So actually talking about taking actions, I started working towards that. I remember like literally 2 weeks later, I started going, okay, so what might that look like? What could I actually do? And then it gave me the third thing, it gave me the confidence to start experimenting, because back to that original point, I knew why I was experimenting. So I started setting up some learning and development programs. I started doing some leadership programs. I started thinking about coaching. And before then, I sort of known those things were interesting to me, but hadn't really done that much about it. Whereas suddenly I was going, no, these are things I need to prioritise in terms of my time, because I know that it will help me get where I'm going. And I'll enjoy it in the short term as well. So actually, having mocked Helen, you know, that's also quite a fun. It's not a super serious kind of exercise to do. It's really easy to do. It's quite fun to do it with someone else, particularly a friend, I would say. I actually did it with someone I didn't know that well, and even that actually works. You know, works quite well. There's no judgment from someone you don't know particularly well, which is kind of nice.
And you don't have to be good at drawing as well. I think that sometimes people might be put off because they might think, oh, but I can't draw. We can't.
Do you want me to draw mine for next week? Shall I commit to doing that? And just to show people that you really don't have to
be.
Where
are you going to put it on the blog post or on the okay?
I don't mind. Or on Instagram.
I'll put it on both. Sarah can draw it, and then if you head over to either Amazing If on Instagram or over to amazingif.com when this podcast is out, you'll be able to see both mine and Sarah's and see. I think again you'll see that they're not beautiful works of art. They're just collections of things that inspire us and enable us to take action today. I'm
very conscious that those things are both quite visual things.
Yes.
And I think sometimes people really love to write, and that's a really useful way. You know, writing things down is really helpful for some people to kind of get things out of especially if you are quite reflective, it's a good way to kind of get things out of your brain and just into kind of the real world. And this is the other thing that I've done, which I also found really helpful, is just write the end of this sentence, which is, I'm at my happiest when ... and then literally write a stream of consciousness until you can't write anymore, or set yourself a time limit and you have to keep writing or thinking for the whole of that time. So you might go, right, I'm going to start at 7 p.m. and I'm not going to finish until 7:30, even if it means I spend 10 minutes just sitting thinking about this or not sure what else to write, but I'm going to just let myself try and get everything out in terms of answering that question. I'm at my happiest when. And then that's always really interesting to see kind of when I've seen other people do that exercise as well. It's amazing. Like some people literally write bullet points. You know, they're like, that's the way they think. They think in such a kind of concise and considered and articulate way. They're like, right, here is my bullet points, which I'm always amazed by. When I did it, it was like scrawling paragraphs and sentences that were like 4 or 5 lines long, you know, with like 0 pauses.
Yeah.
So it really was very much stream of consciousness. But that's another kind of easy way to just have a go at getting into this kind of thinking.
It is, and I'm so opening the door to you mocking me again saying this, but I'm trying to think of it reminded me when we were saying that about another thing that I do with my husband every year. So this is more of setting a vision for the year than a kind of one version of a career vision. But on the 1st of January every year, my husband and I write a card for what we want to achieve that year. So on the 1st of January 2019, we'll write a card about what we want to achieve. And it is that exactly what Sarah said. It's a stream of consciousness. It'll be about work, family life. And then we seal it up and we put it away in a drawer. And then on December the 31st, so New Year's Eve, we open it and kind of read it to each other. And we reflect on, how the reality.
So can you remember what's in your one? Because it's not far
not
away.
at all. Not
Can
at
you
all.
not?
Do you know what? My little boy, I have a boy who's nearly 4 years old called Henry, and I found him going through my office drawers the other day, and he was ripping things up, and he'd ripped open the card, and I was like, no, seal the card or I'm doomed. So when we actually come to open that, probably slightly drunkenly on the 31st of December this year, we're going to have to navigate the fact that he's really ripped the card, and I'm going to have to probably piece it together a little
How
bit.
have you
But
found
no.
it when you've done it before? So I'm trying to remember.
Really?
I'm sure you must have told me, but when you've opened it in previous years, do you feel, does it make you go, oh, I've done more
Yeah,
than
it
I
makes me
thought,
really happy.
or happy?
No,
or...
the odd thing I'll think I won't have done, but it's always the tactical stuff I've not done. Like I've not read a book a month or whatever. But actually the really meaningful stuff, I want to feel, happy about the work I do. I want to feel, positive about the contribution I've made to other people. I want to be able to name 5 people that I've made a difference to. Those sorts of things I've done, and it's always felt really, really positive to look back on it. So I think that's potentially, you could just do this on your own. I do it with my husband because we're that cheesy couple that do that every year. And it's now just like I've got all the cards. We've done it for about 6 years, and I've kept all of the cards every year because I just think it'll be a nice thing to look at when we're old and grey, if we're not already. But I find that just a nice thing to do annually, and it makes me feel like I'm sort of stepping towards something and growing each year. It's nice.
So should we talk about some almost like useful questions and like tools and techniques that if you're kind of going, okay, I've bought this now. I get that this is something that might be useful for me, and we've given you a few ways to do that. Some other kind of hints and tips that might be useful.
Yeah, absolutely. So the first one I think is, I can do it quite quickly, is really fundamental, which is about tuning into your values. So I think a lot of what will help you to navigate an uncertain future is understanding what makes you, what motivates and drives you. If I think about the pictures that were on my lovely collage, a lot of that I could tie back to my values. So for me, that is a great starting point. You can cope with a lot of uncertainty if you know that stuff. We have done a podcast on values, so that is a good listen. Also over on amazingif.com, there is a blog post that is on values, and there's some more links in there as well, some different toolkits to help you explore your values. So for me, that's action number 1, tune into your values, listen to the podcast, head over to the blog post, and that'll get, you can take some action then.
And then one other idea, which I've shamelessly stolen from a guy called Ian Sanders, who is a coach, and he does creativity and kind of storytelling workshops. And he's done some coaching with me in the past, is he asks a really interesting question as part of his coaching, which is, if you were going to do a TED Talk, what would you do it on? And I think that's actually a really interesting way to think about the kind of the what's important to you and what do you want to be spending your time on. Because if you think about the implication behind doing a TED Talk, even though they're kind of very short, they're usually people who have invested lots of time, energy, motivation into something that they're really passionate about. And often that kind of TED Talk is a way of distilling all of that into kind of something kind of short and inspiring. And it's not to kind of imply, sometimes I think that can feel a bit like overwhelming because you think, oh God, like some of these people who do these TED Talks have like, I don't know, cured incredible diseases or
researching this thing
or done these amazing things. But, your equivalent of a TED Talk, I think we kind of get the premise. And actually, I did find that when he asked me that question, I think I thought I would be able to answer that really quickly, and I couldn't.
Yeah, you've got me thinking about it now.
Yeah, and I can now, because if I was now going to do one, I would do one on the squiggly
careers.
Yeah. So now I can. But at the time, I think there was kind of a few things that I was passionate about and interested in, but I'd not kind of landed on that one thing. And your vision isn't just about one thing, but I did find that kind of helpful to just start to distill, some of the choices that you're making in terms of how you're spending your time.
Yeah, I think that when you were talking about the kind of writing your thoughts down on paper, I think using thought-provoking questions to inspire you is a really good thing. So what would you do your TED talk? Maybe even like, how do you define success? Like understanding what success looks like for you, because it is very different for all of us, and there's no judgment about what that is. There's a LinkedIn campaign as well, which is all around kind of what was the title of the campaign, Sarah? What's the hashtag?
It was This Is Success.
This is success. And that had everybody's people that contributed to that campaign defined what success looked like for them. So there's some ideas there, but maybe don't even look there. Just start with it yourself. Don't be too influenced by other people. But that could be something that could help you to generate some thinking about what success looks like for you. Or another one that's kind of also quite visionary is think sort of 40 years out from now, you're being presented with, a lifetime achievement award for something. But what's that person saying about you? What impact have you had on others or the world, or whatever your kind of motivation and driver is? It's just, I think, putting yourself into different places, whether it be on a stage or 40 years from now, and just so that you can reflect on some stuff that's important to you, and looking for themes. I think answer all of those questions and look for the themes. So tip number 3 then is to start to collect things that inspire you. So whether you use this in like a collage like I did, or maybe it's just a folder of things that you can look at and kind of excite you about your future. So that could be images like I did. It could also be jobs, and it's not because you want to do the job, but there's something about that job that's really interesting. That could be something that you could kind of keep in that folder. Also people who inspire you as well, you can kind of collect them on Twitter and things. You can create those groups of people. So you might have like inspiring, it doesn't have to be leaders, but kind of inspiring people. So you can collect those. They're quite useful for your vision, because you might aspire to achieve some of the things that they're achieving. But again, you're looking for themes, because in all of that collection of inspirational stuff will be some themes. Maybe it's about philanthropy, maybe it's about helping others, maybe it's about making a business very successful, maybe again, there's no judgment about the thing, but I think you start with, if you don't know at the moment, you're like, I don't know what my vision is, just don't rush it, but just start collecting things and looking for themes across the different bits and bobs that you're kind of storing away.
I've also done it for companies, which is the thing that we kind of didn't mention there. I think there are companies that you can look to who you think, oh, they really inspire me for a certain reason. It might be because they're incredibly creative in terms of the things they do. It might be because they are saving the world in some way, shape or form. It might be because they've created, a really kind of positive culture, or they've got a leader who you find really inspiring. But there are definitely companies that I look at that are quite far removed from maybe my day-to-day in terms of what they do in terms of their output. But there's something in them that I find just like interesting and inspiring and kind of connects to my vision in some way.
So I'll just recap then on the 3 tips that we've gone through, just so you're really clear if you're in the car or running or wherever you are listening to this. So tip number 1 then, to make it a vision work for you, is to tune into your values. Tip number 2 is to use some thought-provoking questions to stimulate your thinking. And tip number 3 is to collect images, quotes, jobs, people, companies, whatever inspires you, and look for themes across them all. And we've got lots of resources this week that will help you. There's a really good article on goal setting and turning your vision and goals for your career plans. There's one from Forbes on how to create a vision. There's also one around manifestos as well. So Sarah talked earlier about kind of if you like writing more, and there's some examples of that. We'll link them all on the blog post over at amazingif.com.
And I just wanted to say really quickly, thank you to everybody who takes the time for reviewing and rating us. We really do appreciate it. It absolutely makes our day. We get so excited. You should see the WhatsApp messages that we send to each other.
There's a lot of screenshotting going on between Sarah and I when we get nice reviews. Thank you. Well, all our reviews, we screenshot to each other.
Yeah, so it makes our day. It also makes us hopefully help us to kind of realise that we're helping people and it's worth us doing them every week. And we love to know what topics you'd like us to cover that we've not covered already, or maybe you'd like us to look at something a bit differently. You can follow us on Instagram at amazingif, or you can tweet us at amazing_if, or just email us at getintouch@amazingif.com just to let us know your thoughts, your ideas. And if you do get 2 minutes this week to rate and review us on iTunes, we massively appreciate it. It just means that we can continue to do the podcast every week, which we love doing, and hopefully you're kind of enjoying listening. So next week, we're actually going to talk about growth mindset managers. So we've talked before about growth mindset and just how important it is. Lots of times you could basically play growth mindset bingo, I suspect, with our podcasts each week. But what we'd like to focus on particularly next week is, what does it mean to be a growth mindset manager? And we'll make sure that it's relevant for people who are managers today, but also if you're aspiring to be a manager, what are the things that you can start practicing now? What are the things that you can start role modelling within your teams that can really mean that you are creating a really brilliant environment for everyone to work in?
So I'm really looking forward to that, because we've got so many great articles and resources. And funnily enough, I was on a training course today and they brought up a slide on growth mindset. And I was like, well, have I got some good stuff to talk to you about? Basically,
I bet they regretted that day.
I know. I started just talking about it for 10 minutes and I was like, well, don't put that slide up again. So yeah, I'm excited to have a podcast to talk about kind of the manager side of things. So I think that is it for this week. We will be back with you all next week. Bye, everyone.
Thanks for listening, everyone. Bye.